The comic book direct market as you know it is dead. It's gone. Its funeral will be held in due time. Or, in this case, this is the funeral. For those of you who got into manga, especially Demon Slayer, and Demon Slayer was your first manga for any reason, especially because you got tuned out of American comic books in recent years, you have my sympathies, and the Ministry of Otaku will welcome you with open arms. And the entire anime and manga fandom will welcome you with open arms. All this was preventable, but the comic book industry is deliberately sabotage themselves on purpose, and then blame the customer repeatedly when they do not buy their unsellable garbage. During the Great Lockdowns, the comic industry could have gained more profit if they focused on actual entertainment and escapism. If they have told their customers to support their comic shops by any means necessary. Instead, they went all in on producing unsellable product, like Children of the Atom, Captain Marvel, Gotham High, Thor, and more recently, Nubia Real One. And barely no one goes to comic shops now, and comic shops have been accelerating and closing down for good due to lockdowns and low sales. Meanwhile, people who are into comics who are turned off by American comics are always seeking out other forms of entertainment. Obviously, one of them is manga or Japanese manga. The demand is so large that printers are not keeping up with the demand, and one person told Twitter that if you want a certain manga volume of any series, you need to get it now because the shortage is described as apocalyptic. I bought these books from cheapmanga.com. You may know them in the anime convention scene as the science fiction continuum. This place is always my first stop at any anime convention I travel to, whether it's Otakon, Katsucon, MagFest, Anime USA, or any other con in the Northeast. And you can tell that the manga is cheap. Like 2 manga for $10, 4 for $20, 6 for $30. Hours and hours of entertainment. A comic book floppy has the equivalent of 1 chapter for $6. Manga has 8 to 10 chapters for like $10 to $12. Honestly, manga has more entertainment value than a monthly comic floppy. And these 2 books here are from Clownfish Comics, bought separately through Indiegogo. And believe it or not, indie comics are rising. Creator-owned comics are rising and selling like hotcakes, along with manga. So indie-owned comics and regular manga and graphic novels are selling a lot better than general American superhero comics. And despite science fiction continuum not having any cons due to lockdown restrictions, they're still selling manga like hotcakes. So much so that they have sold out periodically. And they actually, and believe it or not, that's only the manga, and the store only sells overstock manga. Overstock manga. Other than manga that is new to the market. They specialize in overstock manga. And they're sold out periodically. Month after month. Much more periodically than normal. Because people are willing to get their manga no matter what. Through online like Amazon.com or White Stuff, or through comic book stores. Believe it or not, comic book stores have been stocking manga, and comic book stores that have been stocking manga are doing much better than ones that haven't. For comic book superhero comics, readers don't have the same motivation because they get their comics monthly through pull boxes. But sales of back issues of comics and graphic novels are high. Why manga and graphic novels are selling like hotcakes? Why are they still selling so much instead of American comic books? It's because the need of escapism. People are trapped in their homes because of lockdowns. Their normal routines gone. They need any escapism from the news that has chronic bad news and fear porn, and from the chronic virtue signaling. They need entertainment that is not injected with partisan political propaganda. American comics used to provide real escapism, but they do not provide that anymore for the most part since 2016. And despite sales reflecting this change, this fact that political propaganda is unsellable as a comic book. Comic book publishers like DC or Marvel refuse to change course, and they keep going to inject more propaganda, more and more. And if anyone complains on social media, especially on Twitter, they get insulted, blocked, mobbed, and the actual writer who made the insult or the comic book creator, they fail upwards. They get rewarded with more assignments. With the lockdowns, the comic book industry collapsed, while the manga industry is still going. It's surviving and thriving. The comic book industry could have used this opportunity to drop the unsellable part and basically tell all comic creators to just go all in on escapism. Basically, and tell their customers to do whatever they want, to do whatever it takes to support the comic book shops. Buy out their inventory if they have to. Instead, they just told people to stay home. And they never cared about the comic book shops struggling with unsellable parts and strangled by lockdowns. What is worse is the constant injection of politics or whole books created based on current events. I have no real objection to politics in comics, as long as the comic is well written and made and where the politics is not obvious. And if you have to make it obvious, do it with conviction. The modern Punisher series, known as Punisher Max, was a direct commentary on actual social issues while providing the classic Punisher action we know and love. There are subtle political references in comic books, but as a backdrop in the real story of the characters. X-Men was a massive allegory on civil and human rights. What is unacceptable is needed to be constantly reminded that the 45th president that was in the office was awful. Readers don't actually care about identity politics as long as the comic is well made and the character is well designed and written to have an attractive personality, to give people a reason to care and support the character. They don't mind about stories about universal subjects that humans can relate to, that regular readers can relate to, problems and issues they can relate to in the world, that is universal and that everyone can agree or disagree. What we do not want to be reminded is that you are awful. That comic books that we don't want to be reminded from comic books that you are awful every page, or every comic, or every comic chapter, or that you're a racist, or a white winger, or be constantly lectured to how awful we are. They need to fuck off with that. Yet they won't, and they keep doing it because they're bankrolled by Hollywood movies. They're still being bankrolled by Hollywood movies, so they can do this with absolute impunity. People do not want this type of crap, so they're not buying American comic books anymore. Classic comic books are still being sold like hotcakes, though. Another reason that manga is still selling is because it has a much wide variety of stories: action, adventure, romantic comedy, garden variety comedy, slice of life, dark fantasy, general fantasy, adventure, comedy drama, comedy, you name it genre, they got it. American comic books have refused to diversify for decades. It's either superhero comics or comedy action comics or action comics. And this, for the most part, because nothing is stopping DC Comics or Marvel Comics from expanding from superhero comics to general entertainment. Even if it's in the same universe, you could have their superheroes making references or cameos in those new general entertainment comics. But no, it will involve work, it will involve too much work, so they want to focus on American comic books. American superhero comic books. And look at what DC and Marvel is now. The worst thing is that DC and Marvel have been creating comics to an audience that have no real interest in comics other than likes and retweets. Basically, they exist for Twitter and Facebook, for people to take selfies with it and not actually buy it. And these recent comics that focus on current events, are meant to be as resume fillers, or for Hollywood deals. 4,000 cycles on Twitter is not going to buy your comics, and they'll cancel you for any reason they don't like. DC and Marvel cater to that audience no matter what, because the films are bankrolling their derangement. Because these comics don't need to make a profit anymore. Hollywood is funding the comic industry. That's why they can produce so much unsellable garbage in the comic book shops. For those of you who have lost all interest in comics because of this, I am sincerely sorry for your loss. No one deserves this. It was all preventable. The comic book industry was duly warned about the crisis, and when the lockdowns came, they stopped caring and let the collapse happen. For all of us who have sought sanctuary in manga, you are welcome with open arms. People need escapism to get away from the drudgery of daily life. It is of concern to us and everyone if you're not allowed to escape from life at all. These days, it's clear that you're not allowed to enjoy anything unless you're thinking about the bug, politics, or how much you can virtue signal to the public. No one wants to be constantly reminded how bad you are or how crap the world is to this day. People want entertainment. They want action. They don't want comedy. They want fantasy worlds to lose themselves, even for an hour. And comic books in DC and Marvel have decided to be platforms of political propaganda. Manga and anime and video games provide pure escapism. And when it comes to social economic issues, they just do it in the backdrop. People need entertainment that is enjoyable more than ever. And we are getting to a point where Americans and the West are seeking and looking towards the East, especially Japan, for their entertainment, as the West has willfully embraced political propaganda. It's past time we exercise our right to escapism. This is JK from the Ministry of Otaku, signing out. Have a good one.